Many leaders, smart leaders, have discovered that if you look after your people and give them good conditions, pay them reasonably, that you'll get a lot more productivity out of them.
Hey guys, it's Matt Haycox here, and welcome to another episode of the Matt Haycox Show. Now, I just want to set a bit of context here before we kind of get on and talk to today's guest, so you can, I guess, for people listening or watching in the future, you can kind of appreciate the environment that we're in right now and the context for this conversation. It's October 2020, October 2020, I'm about to give a year away then, October 2020, and we are very much in the middle of Corona. As always, we film these podcasts down in Soho at the Soho Sanctum Hotel, and whilst walking around the town earlier today, we're living a life of few people on the streets, social distancing, masks, and just really a kind of a life in an environment that 12 months ago would have sounded like something from a futuristic movie or a horror movie. But that is the reality that we're living in, and obviously one of the, I guess, the biggest casualties and one of the biggest adaptations that people have had to make, or specifically businesses have had to make, is working from home. And today I've got with me Chris Kane, who is a working from home expert, a property expert. He's managed $1 billion or £1 billion portfolios for the likes of Disney and the BBC, and he's just recently released a new book called Where's My Office? So I don't think there's anyone better placed to talk about this, this situation in this time. So Chris, thanks a lot for being here.
You're very welcome, and lovely to meet you, Matt.
Thanks a lot. I mean, I guess let's get straight on with it, really. I mean, we were talking just before we started to record, and obviously the book you've just released has been 6 years in the making. But did you always know that this day and this change was going to come, even if we maybe didn't anticipate wearing masks while it happened?
Oh, little did I realise that COVID-19 would be such a huge accelerant of the changes that were already happening. And this is COVID marks the end of the office as we've known it, and the dreadful sort of impact of COVID and the huge amount of suffering that's caused has caused everyone right across the country and across the world, has also brought about a big question mark about why do we do things. And talking to a lot of people now is, why do we need to go to an office to send emails? And furthermore, if you look at sort of how, since the arrival of the smartphone, the arrival of even better technology, cloud computing, whatever, which have all been around for 10, 20 years, more and more people were discovering that you didn't need to be tethered to the desk. And the office, don't forget, is actually, I suppose, a successor of the old working ways in factories and whatever, the old production lines. You'll be very familiar with them from your part of the world. But
before my time.
And well before your time, you're wearing well. But if the long production lines and factories, if you go into traditional offices, you'll see rows and rows of desks. And for many years, people sat there processing paper. Now, paper has been progressively disappearing. Technology has enabled people to do different things, and the nature of work is changing in front of our eyes. The World Economic Forum came out with a report literally this morning which says that 85 million traditional jobs will disappear. Now that's white collar jobs, because one of the things we need to distinguish in this chat is we're talking about the office and office work. There's thousands of other people involved in healthcare and services and manufacturing and distribution, which have different challenges. And we need to understand those as well, because one of the things I've learned, having come from a very sort of focused professional world, is that we need to join up all the dots. And most importantly, we need to move away from our fixation with the fixed workplace and also about having bright, shiny buildings to actually, let's start thinking more about human beings. Let's start talking about people and their concerns and their cares. Because many leaders, smart leaders, have discovered that if you look after your people and give them good conditions, pay them reasonably, then you'll get a lot more productivity out of them. Now, what I tried to do with the book was to say, actually, if you give them reasonable working conditions with good daylighting, good sort of air conditioning, good facilities, and an eye on well-being, then the productivity of your workforce by virtue of having a productive workplace, 2 and 2 will equal 4 in that respect. And that was one of the 3 things I wanted to do with the book, was A, help leaders understand that link, help I guess, people outside of the world to understand a very archaic and inward-looking property system. And last but not least, I've been very fortunate. I come from a very, very small village in Ireland, and looking back at what I've been allowed to get up to, but also the stuff I've learned, I just wanted to give something back and share some of those learnings and insights.
And if I was to ask you just, the very simple, one word yes or no question of, do you think physical offices exist in today's environment or in the future? I mean, what do you think the answer to that would be?
They will continue to exist. The office is not dead, but the system for using them and producing them it's probably obsolete now at this stage. We need to think very differently. There's been a huge debate over work from home. Well, if you're in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment and you're married and you may have 1 or 2 children, that's not very conducive to working from home. So we have to think about this on a much broader scale, and I describe it as we're trying to have this debate as an analog debate, whereas we're living in a digital world. We can work any place, anywhere, any time, and actually with anyone. And that means that enterprises are saying, well, let's just have a mothership in a city centre, and then maybe have some satellite offices. But also, some people may be able to work from home, but you should also provide what I call a localized work solution, where if you're in a town in Britain, wherever it is, 20, 30, 40 miles away from where your mothership is, you should have the ability with a card to go around the corner in the morning and check in and do some work locally. And that will have a huge boost for local communities. It will improve a lot of aspects which are wrong about towns and cities across Britain, where they've been denuded during the day due to this need for many people, mainly male, but a lot of females now, thank the Lord, actually getting on a train and commuting into a big city. Never seems sensible to me.
And I mean, how long in the making do you think this has been? I mean, or rather, how much do you think this has been accelerated because of COVID?
Oh, COVID has been the equivalent of throwing sort of rocket fuel on the smouldering flames. Lots of organisations have been playing with this for 10, 20 years. Mainly the technology companies, and you will be you'll hear a lot about the Googles and the Facebooks and the way they've been working, and lots of other, even banks, even the public service. Britain's public service and their hubs programme has been very forward-looking, despite the stereotype of that. So lots of people have been doing it, but what's held people back, and this has opened the tidal gates, is this, what I call manager's view about you have to be in the job. You still have to be as if you're a factory worker, clocking in Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And I call it the principle of presenteeism. And the principle of presenteeism has been broken for once and for all. Because what we've experienced is this massive experiment of working from home because we had to. Now, behavioural change takes place after you repeat something, I think, is it 60 days? And we've had a good too long, obviously, but it's going to stretch into 2021. So people are saying to themselves, do you know what? I like being home for bath time for my kids. I like being able to go to their school events. And why is it that I spend so much money on a train fare or having a car to commute 20, 30, 40 miles? Do I need to do that every day? Can I be more effective doing something different? So COVID is actually going to cause a huge debate about how we do office work, or if another label might be sort of, I suppose, white collar work. And nobody's ever done that before, because nobody's ever done it as an employer and an employee. That's what makes this unprecedented.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's the kind of crossover of technology and real estate and human resources, and we just started to briefly talk about this before we started to record. I mean I kind of go 180 about it. A lot as an employer. We'd gone into, as you were mentioning to me, I'd gone into COVID, let's say in March time, 2 or 3 months away from the end of a lease on a 3,500 square foot, very expensive and not fit for purpose city centre office. And pre-COVID, we were going to move to another I guess FRI lease style setup.
My God, you've got all the lingo as well. I'm impressed.
and I guess if anything, we're probably going to go a little bigger. COVID kicks in. We made a couple of layoffs. Not furlough style layoffs, but just people who probably needed to go anyway, but we just weren't focused on it prior. And then when we start working from home, we kind of adjusted to working from home. And then I was very much of the mentality of everyone else at that point. That wow, I've learnt about working from home. Kind of almost like too late. Why didn't I know about this years ago? We can save ourselves a fortune on a massive footprint, and we can have a home life, etc., etc. And I was then of the view that look, we still need some kind of base, but rather than having a 100 odd grand a year type setup, we might have a 30 grand a year big reasonable sized serviced office in a Regis or a WeWork or something. And and that's what we did. We moved to that. People start coming back to work in whenever it was, July, August. But then over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've started to be recruiting some new people in some of the different businesses. They're getting some more people in the office. And like now, I've kind of gone back, full circle to March time, thinking, right, I need a bigger office because whilst there are so many benefits to work, to working from home, there's also nothing like being in an office.
Correct.
The adrenaline or the speed, the team spirit, the problems as well, but it all goes together. And now I'm back of like, right, as soon as this lease is up on our serviced office, we're going to get something big and we're going to take over the world again. I'm sure if you ask me again next week, I'll be like, fire everyone, I'm fucking sick of them. But yeah, it's an interesting point.
It is, and if you look at the general discourse, we're still trying to argue the toss between the office versus working from home, and that's only seeing part of the picture. And the other thing is, your business is at a certain cycle in terms of where you are growing and all that side of things, and the best of luck for you for the next iteration of your journey. You're different to company X down the road or company Y across the road. Everyone is different, and yet we have a system which talks to, everybody has to do things in a homogeneous way. And it's not, because one of the big things we've all been coming to terms with in this century is the concept of choice. You can choose to do things today which we never could before. And digital has made that possible. The march of AI and all of that has improved a lot, and attitudes have changed. So the 22-year-old now will really appreciate having the experience of rubbing shoulders with sort of a leader such as yourself, because they can learn from you. But they'll also say, I don't want to be here all the time. And that then opens an even bigger question of, are we seeing the end of Monday to Friday 9 to 5? Are we looking at maybe a more, nuanced shift to an outcomes focus? And that's not for every business. And that's the challenge. We're all trying to come up with one version of the truth, whereas it's going to be on multiple dimensions, and it'll all depend on perspectives, and it'll depend on prejudice. That's why I learned a long time ago that I needed, as a property person, to really understand technology. And I started building relationships with technologies and learning about this stuff, which other people said, no, that's all cable and wire stuff, and you don't need to know about that. You're a surveyor, a chartered surveyor. I said, well, you can never stop learning. So, when I was at Disney, we launched all the international Disney channels. It was a partnership between me and my friend Keith, who was a technologist. And then going into the BBC, I happened to come across the then HR director of British Telecom, Caroline Waters, who was a people person. And Caroline really made it clear for me that office buildings have only one purpose. And that purpose is to enable a business to do its business. It's not. Many people in our industry think an office is there to provide a return on investment, which is fine if you're an investor. But we have this crazy situation where the supply side think they're delivering one thing and the man side wants something different. And they've never had to come together until now.
I mean, what do you think? The employer, the business, the tenant. I mean, what do you think they actually really want? From a practical perspective and an economical perspective. And I guess the answer is, a massive office with no rent and a 3-day break clause.
Yeah.
But being realistic.
Being realistic. What people will need as we go forward, and this once again will be dependent upon size, will be choice and flexibility, and also space that is supported by a reasonable service delivered by the landlord or by the building operator, where they can provide safe, resilient working conditions, be that large or be it small. Some progressive landlords are saying maybe we should think of being similar to a technology platform, and will provide clients with a hub in the city centre or in the town centre, and a whole range of other space solutions, which you use the technology parlance of plug and play. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, but where does that balance between flexibility and cost come in? I mean, I guess for me, maybe, I don't know if it's a good analogy or a bad analogy, but let's use a rental car. I can have complete flexibility, in terms of number of days and changing my cars, with a rental car. But whatever car you choose to pick, if I was going to actually acquire that car on a 3-year HP, it would probably cost me 80% less than if I had the flexibility to give that car back on a daily or weekly basis. So, I mean, all of these, I guess everything you talk about makes complete sense. It's stuff that is going to make benefit to both the employer, the employee, but it must come at a cost.
Yeah, and there's been a huge debate over this in the real estate industry in terms of how do you price flexibility, because the model for many years has been a 25-year lease, and then that came down progressively. And the emergence of the flexible option in the real estate market is set to grow from 5 or 6% to 30% in the next 2 or 3 years. I think it'll be 50%.
Is that all the number is? There's only 5% of people in the are on.
And if you look at it, the first rule in any business is understand your customer and understand your customer journey. The real estate has got to start learning all about that, because Britain, relatively speaking, is a small island, and if you're a landlord or investment company here, investing in real estate is a good deal, because demand has always sort of exceeded supply. The age-old adage of, if you're in the insurance or banking business, you had to be in the City of London, that square mile. That's done, that's over with. Now a company can operate successfully anywhere. Many of the large technology companies in Silicon Valley are saying, let's go completely remote. Whether that's a good solution for them, time will tell. But so there's massive change taking place here on multiple fronts that we've never seen the like of before.
And whether we're talking motherships and hubs or working from home, etc., I mean, there's a lot more pieces of the jigsaw other than just a real estate itself. Obviously, particularly from a technology perspective, are all the other players in the game up to speed?
No. And one of the big challenges, which I've learned over the years, is that we have this propensity to live in silos, and to, in my real estate world, there's actually 3 sub-silos of assets, facilities, and design and construction people. But, the big one is people, process, and place. And the HR world, the best example I can give you is if you're a HR professional and you talk about the workplace, your default is workplace means pay and conditions, learning and development. From my perspective, I'd be thinking more about the physical side of things. And I've talked at length over the years about the need for things to become much more people-centric and to clearly understand the relationship between people and place. But the emphasis has to be on the individual first and the place follow, rather than if you're a traditional landlord, it's the place first and then the people follow. So there's that, because, you've got to get, and that's all about perspectives. And that's why I've written the book, to try and help people see the wood for the trees and to explain some of this stuff and say, hey, we're in the 21st century, we're facing a crisis nobody has ever in their wildest dreams expected to happen. It's caused huge sort of upset. It has been horrible for a lot of families. There's been huge suffering. And that's just on the human scale. And the economic scale we're only beginning to experience now. So therefore, I think it behoves us to really start thinking differently so we can provide better working environments. And also, more importantly, I regard myself as a steward of the built environment. We've got to do a far better job of leaving a more sustainable legacy for the kids that follow us.
Now, I know, your expertise or probably the book's very much surrounding offices and service industry, but a question that I'm sure is on many people's lips, certainly is mine, is what is going to happen to retail property going forward. I guess both from a layman's perspective of what are our high streets going to look like. Is there going to be a use for these in the future? And I guess from an investment perspective, what are the balance sheets or P&Ls of these massive property owners and landowners going to look like?
Yeah, and that's a big question. Let me see, can I break it down? Because it's really all about joining the dots. If we bring people sort of back to towns across the country, maybe there'll be more life in the high streets. But we got to really think also about the nature of the high street and the costs of such, and local taxation rates is a moot point for a lot of people as well. So we really need a big debate about the future of Britain's urban centres, and really think about providing people with decent living accommodation. And also then on the retailing side, retail have been under assault for 10, 15 years with the arrival of online and with the massive sort of online stores such as the Amazons and whatever. And everyone has tried to adopt and tried to figure out how can we survive. Some have survived, there will be winners and losers, but this is going to be a major challenge, make no doubt about it. So that's going to call for major leadership in this. And people have got to realise that the nature of our economy is going to change.
I think that's the thing as well, that always for me seems to get overlooked in these debates about retail. Where you've got your stereotypical shopkeepers moaning that rents are too high or rates are too high. Now, and I'm probably completely generalising here, and I don't know how far off the mark I am, but I wouldn't feel too uncomfortable saying that so many of these moaning businesses, you could give them rent-free and rates-free for the rest of their life, and they still wouldn't make a fucking penny, because their business is shot, the customer service is non-existent, the product's probably wrong, and that's before we even talk about the fact that customer habits are changing. And it's I guess a very interesting point to either debate or see through into the future, where you look at take the Trafford Centre or whatever, and they'll say, well, rents are too high, rates are too high. But I'm sure if they slash the rents 50%, if they slash them 75%, that isn't going to be the difference between abject failure and roaring success of these tenants. And where does that leave that once huge capital investment?
Well, I think, I'm no retail expert, but if you look at how retail has evolved over the last 10 years, it's moved from being something where people went out to buy something because they needed it to the experience. And the smarter retailers have recognized that retailing is not only a buying, it's a day out for some people. So how do you build upon that? But also, everyone has to recognize that this is going to, I think, really, as you say, cull certain retailers, which will then give opportunity for new people to come into the high street. And there's going to be, if you look at what's happening, say, in Paris and the 15-minute city, where the mayor there has said, let's get rid of our outdated love affair with the car and make our city more accessible, make it more walkable. What if certain high streets were pedestrianised? And a lot of them are. I was going down in Chichester a couple of weeks ago, and it was remarkable how the pedestrianisation has worked there. So we need leadership, and we need a fresh raft of entrepreneurial spirit to put life back in Britain's high streets.
Well, yeah, I mean, experience will always win over functionality in the end.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a second book for you there.
Who knows? Who knows?
Well, listen, I guess talking of books, thanks a lot for being here. I mean, I know the book only came out last week, and for you guys listening to this in the future, I don't know when last week actually was, but where can we find the book? Where can we buy it, download it?
Yeah, basically, there's a simple website, where'smyoffice.com. That'll point you towards Bloomsbury or Amazon, where you can get it, and it'll also have my contact details.
And have we got any social handles or anywhere we can find you?
Yeah, at Chris Kane 55 on Twitter and Chris Kane 555 on Instagram.
Fantastic. Well, look, Chris, thanks a lot for being
here. You're
very
welcome.
Guys, thanks a lot for listening. If you're listening, make sure you watch over on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you listen over on iTunes and Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you like it, press like. If you don't subscribe, make sure you do. And I look forward to seeing you in a future episode.